So I'm going to begin today by letting you all know that I have a theme for 2023. And that theme is called Decolonizing the Spirit. And so I'm going to put a disclaimer right now, because even maybe the title was a little triggering for some of you all. Anybody trigger like decolonizing? What the heck? I want to just allow some space here. I want to invite everyone to give me a little grace. I want to allow and invite everyone to open up to what you might not know. I want everyone to open up and to maybe let go of what you think you know, to allow for Holy Spirit to bless you with a different truth. And so I'm going to invite everyone to open your mind, to allow Holy Spirit to sort of play in a different way, to allow us to let go of what our mind has been preconditioned to think, to understand, and to know. And I want us to open up our heart as we move through this year to be able to feel into what is the truth of who we are, to be able to feel and connect with others on a real level, like on a realness, really connecting with each other, no matter what is happening or how it's feeling, to be able to be present with that heart-to-heart connection. And then to open up to that core, to that spiritual core, to the truth, to the essence, to that intuition, that guidance, right? Well, there's a reason why you say, like it feels like somebody kicked you in the stomach, or when you're talking about how you felt, that there was that something in your stomach was bubbling. Has anybody ever felt that when you feel something in your stomach? It's like that feeling. That's a real thing. That's because energetically, this is where your intuition is. This is where that connection is to life, to source in that way. In Chinese medicine, it's considered the second brain. And so we're opening up that to be able to feel those gut reactions. What is true? What is true? How does that feel in your body? What is true? And so we're opening up to all of this here, because what I'd like to do this year is to have us start picking through how much of how we understand the world is based on a colonized mindset. What do I mean by that? Yes, there is a reality that countries were colonized, that we had powers that be that had a lot of access to resources and things like that. For example, Europeans that came to this country and then colonized indigenous peoples and all the things that occurred. Yes, that's part of what I'm talking about, but not quite. What I want us to focus in on is more the mindset that occurs as a result of what we have been living through for many, many years. And what I want us to think about and feel into and open up to is not just the colonization of this country, not just the colonization that occurred in the iteration of more modernity, if you will, but even opening up to the idea that Jesus was in an occupied state, right? Let's think about that. He's talking about in Roman aggression, Roman oppressors were there, and that's a reality of what he's speaking to when he's talking about being able to be different, to think different, to act different. So some of this is like, I have no idea what the heck she's talking about this morning. What did she drink in Mexico? Tequila? No, I didn't really. But I want us to just allow for space for that confusion as we move through this year, as you allow yourself to kind of take in bits and pieces of it. If some of it doesn't make sense right now, let it go. It's okay. And if some of it will never make sense, let it go. It might not be the time for you. But I want us to just open up that space so that we can begin this conversation of what does it really mean to let go of these mindsets that can truly allow for these new thought principles to rise. Because we've talked about new thought, we've talked about all of these things, the idea of love and the idea of oneness, and yet there's something that has not really caught, in my opinion, for so many years. And so part of it is not having taken to task what is in the subconscious mind, what is back there in terms of how we're understanding and assessing the things that we do in life. And so this is my kind of plan for this year. This came to me in June at the Pine Ridge Reservation when we were serving at the Lakota Reservation, and I heard it clear as day, this voice, this kind of divine grandmother voice that came through and said, "You must speak about the colonization of the spirit." And I thought, what? I didn't even understand it myself, what that meant and why I was being given this task. I spoke about it a little bit as I kind of tiptoe into it when I spoke in July at the International New Thought Alliance conference that kind of allowed me to sort of start that journey. And I've sat on it for all of these months, waiting to be able to begin this as a journey here as a community for this year. How is it that we begin parsing out this idea of a colonized mindset that is based on fear and domination? How is it that we begin to parse out this idea of so much in our subconscious comes from a spirit of accumulation and not a sharing? All of this is going to make sense as we think about all of the things in our lives and are opening ourselves up to our own prosperity. The theme for January is about having faith in the invisible substance of spirit. When Charles Fillmore or other New Thought folks talked about this idea of prosperity and about abundance, they use the concept of substance, that all of life is substance. Money is nothing but spiritual substance. What does that mean? That it's an energetic force that we use. Instead of focusing on the materiality like that dollar, we're focusing on the spiritual aspect of what it means, of how we come to it, of how we understand it, how we use it for the good of God. And so that's part of kind of what they're talking about, that it's substance is a guiding force. It's an energetic resonance. It's something that we're connecting to. Let's think about this. Most of us, if we're really true about what's happening in our lives and how we even come to unity, and I'll even speak as a minister who's been in unity for a number of years, sometimes you're like, how can I truly trust? How can I truly be in faith? Right? When you say, I'm going to trust God for all of my substance, how does that even make sense? Most of us think that we're trusting our own ethic, work ethic, and how we're coming to life and what we're doing in the real world and our job and our boss and our parents and what we're inherited in life or what have you. All of that is material. It's not really the truth of your spiritual substance. Let's think about this. I don't have my phone with me, but who has their phone? Anybody got their phone with them? So when you look at your phone, right, you take it out and you look at it and you start dialing, most of us are not going to doubt that we're going to make a phone call. We're texting. Most of us are not going to doubt that somehow their text is going to come through. Now, I don't know about you, but I think most of us have no freaking clue how all of that happens, right? I have this Fitbit. How it knows all of these amazing things about me, I have no idea. Anybody got a Fitbit or a smartwatch? We trust that it's going to work. We trust that it's not failing us. We trust that there's something out there in the ethers that's working. The cell towers, I don't even know how all this happens, right? But we're trusting that it works. Why is it that we don't trust God in the same way? Think about that. When it comes to then having to put our faith in the Holy Spirit, we back it up, don't we? Like, no, is this really going to work? Anybody been there? Anybody there now? But we trust our phone. So what I'm inviting everyone is to, again, start thinking about these things. How is it that we begin trusting that God is a supply of all our need? And believing that at our core. Again, no matter what is happening, God is going to be like, ooh, do that dance, do that happy dance. I'm going to move this way. I'm going to move that way. I'm going to call in somebody else who's going to dance with me and pull me through that terrain. Something that we believe in is that. So today I said that what I was going to talk about was how to create unlimited prosperity. Anybody want to create unlimited prosperity in their life? That sounds real good, right? We also have to think about what do we mean when we're talking about prosperity. Because most of the time in this country, in a first world context, we're talking about money, are we not? Most of the time when you think about prosperity, it's like money. How is it that I have money? How have I accumulated money? How can I accumulate money? Because we put so much emphasis and so much thought on these paper, this dirty paper. It's real dirty. Did y'all know that? This dirty paper, as how these things, this dirty paper is going to make us happy. Having this dirty paper, I'm going to have access to a better house or a better car or a better partner or whatever the thing is. When we're talking about prosperity in this context, we're talking about every aspect of your life. All of these things work together. See, we forget that. We think my money situation is over here. My relationship is over here. My family is over here. And the truth is, it is just like this puzzle, this interconnected, woven thing, that all of these work together. And so you may have so much abundance in one area, but you might not in another. And why is that? Because there's so many different things that you have to be attentive to. You may do really well, let's say, and have a prosperous financial life, but the rest of your life might be a mess. And much of that is because we're not thinking about how all of these things are interconnected. I'll talk more about that. But we're talking about all of these things, all of the areas of our life that create an abundant living. I want to level set for a little bit. Charles Fillmore, who is a co-founder of Unity, wrote a book called Prosperity, and that's the basis of the class that I'll be teaching this month. It is an amazing book. To me, it's still one of the best books that is out there on this idea of prosperity. Most of what is in that book has never been talked about in Unity, in my opinion. And much of what he writes about can be a little terse, so most people kind of get turned off to him, but it's really an incredible truth teaching. If we look also at what he's talking about in Revealing Word, which is a book that he wrote talking about the metaphysics of different things, I'm going to share with you what he says about prosperity in the Revealing Word. This is a metaphysical meaning, that is, beyond what we think and see. Metaphysical only means beyond the physical. So it's kind of like the essence, the spiritual essence of what this means. So the metaphysical meaning of prosperity, he says, is the consciousness of God as the abundant, everywhere present resource, unfailing, ready for all who open themselves up to it through faith. They that seek Jehovah shall not want any good. And that's from Psalms 34:10. Prosperity is based on the conscious possession of the idea of God's abundance back of all things. Things come and go, but the idea of abundance endures. Things appear as its command. Jesus had no visible possessions, but he could supply thousands of persons with food through praising and giving thanks to the invisible spirit of plenty. The difference between spiritual prosperity and material prosperity is that spiritual prosperity is founded on the understanding of the inexhaustible, omnipresent substance of spirit as the source of supply. The material belief is that the possession of things constitute prosperity. What is he talking about? I'm going to pause for a second. The understanding of the inexhaustible, omnipresent substance of the Spirit as a source of supply. All that means, what I've just already said before, is that God is a source of all of our good. Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, Allah, Buddha, science, I don't care what you want to call that energetic presence that is within you, around you, between you, that animates the world. Whatever you want to call it that is. But this is what we're talking about, that there is that energy that is in everything, that is the true source of our supply, not dirty paper or what we think we get to create it or have it in our bank account. In demonstrating prosperity, you should praise and give thanks for every little evidence of financial improvement. Be confident of the immediate cooperation of God's Spirit with you in bringing to pass that for which you have given thanks. The divine resource never fails. God is an omnipresent, unfailing resource for all who trust in God and who make all their thoughts accord, that is aligned with divine mind. God is your prosperity. Stamp this thought daily on your mind, and you will reap financial success. That's a lot to take in, is it not? Most of us don't think about prosperity from this perspective. We don't necessarily think about it coming from source, coming from God, that everything that we are gifted with in life is, Charles Fillmore would say, is not even our possession. If you have that house, if you have that car, if you have that great job, if you have that great partner, it really is God's possession that you have been temporarily gifted with by the blessing of the Spirit. That's hard to kind of download. It's hard to download because we think of these as ours. I've earned this. I've worked hard for this. This is mine. And Charles Fillmore in the book Prosperity is pushing us to think about nothing is ours. Everything has been given to us by the grace and the love of the Spirit, and it has been used not just for our good, but it's been brought to us for a greater good, for the collective good, for the use of everyone. Changes things, does it not? Fillmore says that we have to work with this unseen force of this invisible spirit, again, what he calls spiritual substance. And that is the primary law of increase. That's what he says, the primary law of increase. That means the first factor to be able to bring prosperity in every aspect of your life is faith. Having faith in that invisible supply, having faith in that invisible substance as a factor to be able to connect with those divine ideas. Not knowing how it will come sometimes, not know when it will come, but only know that it will come. And he says that in order to be able to be open to faith, it's that faith that you're open to as well as the action. Most of us think that I've been brought this idea of spirit. I remember my brother telling me that he had the idea for, I think it was like Instacart years ago, and he never acted on it. Boy, he's kicking himself in the butt right now, isn't he? We think about that as funny, but so many times we are given by the Spirit these divine ideas that come to us about what to do, how to do, who to talk to, what are our next steps, how to reprocess our past, but we take it for granted. We think of it as silly, we think of it as illogical, we think about it as weird sometimes, but these are messages that are being given to you by the Spirit to be able to enact your prosperity. So it's not just faith, being open to faith, but it is being open to your action to be able to take hold of that faith idea. Making sense? Jesus, as I said, is our master teacher. And when we look at the trajectory of Jesus' life and Jesus' teachings, it was all about having faith. Anytime somebody was healed, he didn't say, I healed you, thank me, Zelle me for send me on my Zelle, right? Cash at me, whatever, Venmo me, all the, it was like, through your faith, you are healed. Faith, again, for Jesus is the linchpin to abundant living. It's the linchpin to faith. It's the linchpin to be able to create this unlimited prosperity in our lives. But it's challenging, and part of it is doing that dance, doing that interchange, practicing all of this. It doesn't come in one fell swoop. For some of you, it might. But it's practicing all of this, taking those leaps of faith, even a little one, like I said, closing your eyes in meditation, taking a chance and coming to pray with a prayer chaplain. All of these small acts are never small in spirit because you're telling the spiritual ethers, I'm ready. You're cracking yourself open just a little bit to be able for that light to shine through and bless you. All of these things that we do make a difference. Stepping out. How can you step out in your life in a small, even way to be able to create that unlimited prosperity? I want to share with you today 3 things that I encourage you all to consider as you do this kind of practice of faith as supply, as you open yourself up to the reality that God is the source of your supply. As I mentioned before about breaking down mindsets, the first thing that you have to think about one of the first steps is identify and let go of limiting beliefs. What are some of the beliefs that you may have from your past, from your childhood, from your educational rearing, from any kind of previous situation? Maybe you don't even know what's there from your ancestry that is limiting your belief. I'm going to give you one example. It's silly, perhaps, but those of you who are women here, or maybe who, even if you're not women and you still like to wear high heels, what are you told? You can't past Labor Day wear what? White. Why? Who said that? Think about it. I remember seeing on the internet the other day a colleague of mine who said she bought a green sequin dress, and she was asking on Facebook thoughts about how she could wear it and where she could wear it to. And I was like, girl, wear it to the grocery store. And it was this, everyone was like, what? When I did my talk at INTA in July, one of the things that I did in terms of this idea of decolonizing the mind was I walked into my talk wearing a gold sequin dress. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And people were like, what? I even had one of the ministers come up to me afterward. She's like, girl, I saw you walking in. And I was like, what? Did she not see the time? It's not 5 o'clock yet. It's not cocktail hour yet. And she joked and said that. But part of it is like all these little things that we do that restrict us, that put us in bondage. Who said that was what we needed to do? Why? Makes no sense ultimately. And yet we follow it. We follow all of these little rules that then end up creating this bondage in our mind of how we can't allow our spirit to soar. It sounds silly, but think about what are those things in your life that are limiting your beliefs. My mom, I remember taking her to the shoe store a couple years ago, and she saw these high-top sneakers, and she was like, oh, those are really nice. I'm like, get them. She's like, I'm too old. I can't wear high-top sneakers. And I said, why not? Who said that? What are the limiting beliefs that you have about your life? I'm too old. Miriam, one of our congregants, called the terrible twos. Terrible twos. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too big. I'm too small. I'm too over it, whatever. The terrible twos, getting rid of that limiting lack belief. You can pray all day. You can meditate all day. You can do worksheets all day. But if you do not get rid of the unconscious beliefs that are blocking your good, all of that will be in vain. You may have a little bit of movement, but this is number one. What is in the back of your mind? Is it a feeling of unworthiness? Is it a feeling of lack? Is it fear that is holding you, chaining you to not stepping forward to your good? What are those unlimiting beliefs? The second, be grateful. And that was a song about being grateful no matter what. We forget sometimes about so much in our lives. How many of us, and be honest, when someone asks how you are, you're like, ooh, I don't have money to pay this bill. Oh, my husband is driving me crazy. Or, oh, these kids, ooh, can I get rid of them? When are they going to college? Most of us are hardwired to complain. Yes? Don't leave me hanging out here, y'all. Yes, we are. That's what the news is about. That's why we get hooked on the news, because it's all about complain. What's going wrong? We are hardwired, unfortunately, to look at lack, to look at not what's going right in our life. Let me tell you something. God will never further prosper. Your godness will never further prosper if you can't appreciate what you have now. If you've got $5 in your bank account, be grateful for those $5 and know that there's something moving in you and what you can do to be able to prosper that $5. But be grateful for that. We forget all of these things. Look, I was just in Mexico. I was in rural Mexico, and the first few days were rough. We're talking about homes that were still built with rock. And I'm talking about like I could put my eye and see through the street, okay? So rock structures, things that there was plumbing, the bathroom was outside. Can y'all imagine having to, in the middle of the night, when you got to go do the pee-pee dance and you got to go outside to do that? All of these things, not having running water, not having hot water, there's a limited time where you can get hot water. All of these things, the first few days for me were challenging because I was feeling these things about being a spoiled first world person and then feeling guilty about having these things happening where I was feeling. But at the same time, it was such a beautiful opportunity to be grateful for all of these things we take for granted. You know, running water, flushing toilets, indoor plumbing, indoor bathrooms, all of the things. So I invite you, what are the things in your life that you take for granted? What are the things in your life that are a blessing for you? What are the things in your life that you have to open yourself up to being grateful for so that you can be part of that flow of unlimited prosperity? Again, if you have something in your hand and you can't look at it and see the beauty, how is more going to come into it? Think about that. No matter how disturbing a situation may be, no matter how trifling somebody may be, no matter how problematic a situation may be, there is always some blessing and some beauty you can call forth. And when you can see with the minds of spirit, again, you're opening yourself up to that creation of that unlimited prosperity. And last, this is the hardest for many of us because we don't think of it this way. But giving is the quickest and most powerful way that you will come to your unlimited prosperity. And we're not used to that. Again, the hardwiring is, I've earned this. This is mine. I only have these $5 in my bank. I'm not going to give you 4 of them or all of them because this is all I have. And yet all of the prosperity teachers of all time, including Jesus, the Fillmores, will tell you that no matter what you do or don't have, you must give it. You give of your time. You give of your talent. That means if you have a gift, you give it to share. You give of your treasure. That means your money. And I will add 2 other T's to that you give also when you're giving of your things. Anybody need to clean out a closet? Giving of your things as well, sharing that energy, being in that prosperous flow with somebody. And the last one is your thoughts. We don't think about the fact that that's giving, but how are we unforgiving? How do we have a situation at the mall, let's say, and somebody annoys you and you act in an unforgiving way, or you act and you think something about that person, like, oh, I can't stand that person, I hope she trips. Anybody been there? These are what I'm talking about. This is the other way in which we give, that we can give in a way, flipping that script instead of being in a negative thinking mode. How can we open ourselves up to tithing in that way, in that different way of opening up to that giving space? Giving is the most powerful thing you can do. It creates a joy in your life. It creates a peace in your life. And yes, it can be the vehicle to more prosperity. Again, when I was in Mexico, I was so overwhelmed by seeing people who were, by all standards, in utter poverty. In Mexico, even in the urban centers, the minimum wage will get you $12 a day. Let me say that again, $12 a day. Home Depot right now will pay you $15 an hour, and most people don't even want to do that. But $12 a day, and even though there was so little that people had, they came to the funeral and to Veronica's family with whatever they could. A pack of tortillas, some tamales, a chicken, all of these things, people coming to say, I'm here to share in your grief and to support you. And this is all I have, but I come with an open heart and I come with this opportunity to share this with you. It was such a beautiful reminder that we always, always, always have something to give. Because most of the time we think, I don't have anything to give. Who am I? I have so little, and yet we have so much. So I challenge you all, the third thing, how can you give? How can you continue to be this giving presence? Again, time, talent, treasure, thoughts, things. How can you open that portal to prosperity? By giving. The quickest way, the best way, the most fulfilling way, giving. Proverbs 11:24-25 says, some give freely, yet grow all the richer. Others withhold what is due and only suffer want. A generous person will be enriched, and one who gives water will get water. I want to close by adding one more to this. Those are kind of the three steps or three parts that I encourage you all to think about. But we're going to circle back in some ways to an additional one, and yet one that permeates all of those three, and that's the idea of faith, which we've been talking about really all today. This idea of faith that gives you vision. As I said, when you have faith, when you trust in God, when you trust in this universal wisdom, when you trust in this allness, this oneness, whatever it is you want to call it, when you trust, then you see differently. And when you see something, you act on it without knowing why or how, but trusting that somehow, some way, this will make sense. I was so blown away listening to stories of Veronica's parents in Mexico. I was blown away by thinking about what it means to live in a third world country. I grew up in the United States. I was born and raised in the United States. Most of my family lives in the United States, so I don't have that direct experience oftentimes. And so to be there and to really listen to different stories about people's lives and how they understand their lives and how even with so little they create so much. And to understand further my wife and who she is and the product of being in that environment. You know, most people don't know she came here to the United States 27 years ago, as she was a very young girl, not having anything other than a visa that allowed her to be here. She came not knowing, but knowing that God gave her that vision, never knowing much about the United States, never understanding, but knowing that God had given her that vision that you must go north, and so she did. And so there were many times where she struggled and she had to do things that sometimes didn't mean eating because she had to send money home to her family. And yet she did it because she held to that vision, to that faith and spirit to be her all supply. 2 years after she was here, she gathered enough money to purchase property. Can you imagine that? It took me eons to be able to have anything. Most of people who are citizens in this country don't even do that. But again, it's this mentality, this mindset of trusting God. When people tell you you can't, you keep to your vision. You keep to what God has shown you. You keep to that faith in the Spirit that will constantly provide those stepping stones, that way to be able to dance and move forward. And I understood hearing her father's story, who had nothing and yet saw in the suburbs of Mexico, which was Mexico City, which was not even Mexico City at that point anymore. Now it is, but it was nothing. It was a huge mountain. And he bought a little tiny piece on that hill. Nothing was there. And he bought a piece and he said, this will be the home for my family and my children. People thought he was a nut. People thought he was crazy. People thought he would never be able to have the resources to build anything. Why would you want to buy for nothing this piece of land where there is nothing? And yet you look at what has been built and it is jaw-dropping. It is a sprawling center now. When I stood on the rooftop of that place and saw the panorama of Mexico City, it was breathtaking. I'll show you all pictures if you want. Again, the power of God's vision. I offer you all only these stories as examples so that you can think about and feel into your own lives, what are the messages that you are being given? How can you hold to that vision of source and supply against all odds, against everything that you see and people tell you to be able to be in your prosperity? This is the linchpin, my good people. It is not easy to let go of fear, but this is what we must do. We are creating a new reality. I am stepping into 2023, telling you all that we as a community can create a new reality. We can let go of the shackles of a colonial mind. We can let go of the shackles of lack. We can let go of the shackles of our minds that tell us we can't, to hold to the prosperous vision of the good Lord, of the allness, of the oneness, of the one mind, of the energetic resonance, to be able to step forward and build for ourselves, for our families, and for the world. I believe this, and I ask and hope that you believe this with me too. And so it is.